Welcome to Crucial Conversations with Will Rodriguez. I got a very special guest today, Krissy Wolf. She's going to be sharing her story. She's an entrepreneur, she's a thought leader, and I can't wait for her to share more. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you. Well, I'm super excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, likewise. And what people don't know is that we connected, I think, less than a year ago. And ever since we interacted a little bit in the comment section in Facebook, I was like, if I ever start a podcast, I need her on. I don't know why, but I need her on. So I think I
You never
told you
know
that.
what
I'm
I'm
not
going to
sure.
say, so hopefully it works and you don't have to edit me too much.
Oh, I like good debate. Let's put it that way. I sometimes
Okay,
post
yeah,
controversial stuff. So yeah, and
okay.
then you give really good insight too on things that I talk about. Sometimes she
Yeah.
corrects me too, so I'm like, I'll take that L.
You know what I love about the way that you communicate on social media is that you, for one, you are very, in my opinion, you're very opinionated, but you are also very open to like
Hmm.
a conversation. You're really great at taking other people's input. So yeah, I'm excited to be on your show because I feel like it's going to be good to hear what you have to say, but I also know that it should be a good two-way conversation.
Hey, we motivating the nation, gonna set the foundation, spreading positive knowledge, crucial conversation. All rise for the Will Rodriguez show. Let's go.
Yes. And we're gonna try to like do this podcast maybe like under 30 minutes. We're gonna try.
Okay.
Okay. I know you
I
have to
love
do
it.
something after this, but let's just try. Okay. So let's get to it. Tell
Yeah.
us who you are. Tell us more about you.
Okay, well, like you said, I'm Krissy Wolf, and I am an entrepreneur. My husband and I own a business together. We've been doing business together for many years, since 2008, even before we were married. We kind of have I maybe a little bit less traditional relationship in that regard. We were a blended family. We both came from unique situations. I was sort of freshly divorced and had been through so much when we met. And yeah, it's just been kind of my life has been um, one series of maybe a come up or a leveling up, one after another. And yeah, it's just been a cool ride. Came from a military family and now an entrepreneurial family, and I'm really loving it. And working with my husband has been really cool as well.
That's so awesome. And
Yeah,
I see the bond that you guys have is just amazing.
yeah,
Um,
we like each other a lot. Kind of obnoxious. We've been together 18 years, so
mm,
yeah, we kind of act like newlyweds a lot, and
yeah,
we have a pretty good chemistry, and
that's awesome.
it's fun to work with him.
You got to keep the love fresh. So I love that about you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very like we've always been like very intentional about focusing on like our friendship and our relationship,
Mm,
like because I found and we agree that when you I don't know, in a romantic relationship, like the expectations could just be so heavy.
hmm
And so one thing that we try to be really intentional about, and we're absolutely not perfect about it at all, is seeing each other as like truly our best friends.
mm,
And so I think we give each other a lot more compassion and a lot more grace than we would if we just saw each other as like just a spouse or just the business partner.
mm,
But like when you're dealing with your best friend and they have a bad day, and they're beating themselves up, like you want to lift them up and encourage them. You don't want to
hmm
pile on. And so I
hmm
think that that's been like a huge part, like that compassion piece has been a
hmm
huge part in kind of keeping us straight. And I'm one, unfortunately, that like kind of leans into criticism a little too heavily. And so I have to really keep that like compassion piece as like a focal point
mm,
and how I approach different situations, because just
mm.
because I see something can be better doesn't mean that, it needs to be the constant focus of every conversation. So, we work really hard to constantly like keep our relationship moving in the right direction. It's definitely not accidental magic. It
Mm.
takes consistent work for sure.
I think, when you're single and you haven't gone through nothing, you see
Hmm.
things through another lens.
Mm-hmm.
once you're married or with someone and you go through some stuff, you're like, oh, this is real, right? It's
Mm,
not just about the flowers, not just about,
right.
taking the pictures or about the
Mhm.
sex. It's
Right.
deeper than that, right?
It absolutely is.
Um, and you said you gone through some stuff, right, in your
Yeah,
past, and from that, I'm sure you learn. I'm sure there was wounds, and
for
you
sure.
got what now your husband, which I met too. Amazing guy,
Y'all
amazing guy.
did? Oh yeah, he's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Because Owen invited me to the mastermind, and I was there. I connected with them. He let
Oh,
me
that's
in,
right.
and
Oh,
I get
that's
to
so
network with
cool.
everybody. So yeah, yeah, amazing guy.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And also shout out to Owen Video. What's up?
Hey, we love Owen. Owen is such a cool guy.
Yeah, he's like my spiritual father, right? So we
Aw,
go way back.
really?
Yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
he like, okay, is he old enough to be the father figure, or you're
Not
just gonna?
really. I mean,
He's
he's like
definitely your
45, I
dad.
think, but kind of spiritual
Just one
uncle.
with it.
uh, but yeah. So you said, you gone through some stuff, and right now you're very intentional in communication, right? And not
Yes.
only we talk about the business here in a little bit, but
Yeah.
I want to focus a little more on the relationship, the marriage aspect, because I think it's
Sure.
important. So I'm assuming that your communication wasn't always great, and you had to work at your communication, right?
We're still working on our communication.
Okay.
Like we're still working on it. Like I don't know. I mean, do you know any couples that like they've got their communication like on lock? I don't know. I want to meet those people because I want to know exactly what they're doing. But we are definitely continuing to work on our communication.
Mm,
Sometimes we have to tweak it, based on like schedule and life demands, but um, how we communicate, how often we communicate about different things, how we approach different situations, knowing when not to have those conversations. Like, there's so many nuances to communication
mm,
that can like make or break things. And there's some universal truths to communication. But then there's also those individual preferences and needs that you also have to take into consideration. It's so layered and it's
mm.
so complex.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I feel like it's something that every couple is always improving upon, or they should
Hmm.
always be improving upon, because as we learn more about ourselves, as we learn more about our partner, and as we just learn more about communication skills in general, like we're just going to keep stacking those skills. It's just,
Yeah.
we just throw more into our toolbox all the time.
Makes
So like
sense.
how we started out isn't going to be how we finish, because we're just
Hmm.
going to keep getting better all the time as we
Mm,
understand, especially for really listening to each other,
mm,
and kind of learning each other. And also like a huge piece I think is so important from like a friendship, a relationship, um, and then like the romance side of things,
hmm.
excuse me, is to keep getting to know each other, which when you've
Yeah.
been together 18 years, like you really got to dig deep to find
Mm,
ways to get to know your partner, right? Like
mhm.
you've got to keep asking questions. You have to stay extremely curious. Like you got to actively be in love even when you don't feel in love, that
Mm,
like on that like super intense level. But I don't know, one thing that we work really hard at is to ask each other like the big questions that um are random, like even like the Facebook questions, like, well, like what would you tell your 12-year-old self? Like we'll ask each other those questions and then
mm,
keep asking follow-up questions, because with each of that you learn a little bit more, and that keeps it fun, and that keeps that friendship and that intimacy developing, and that makes it a
mm,
lot more like doable, I think,
mm.
when we're both kind of actively curious about each other and we stay that way.
That's so good. That's so good. For me, I didn't really see any good role models growing up.
Mhm.
Didn't really see what a healthy marriage looked like at all, until recently, right? That I got around a different circle, obviously, and yeah, I see things a little bit different now compared to how I grew up. And I met I'm not sure if you know Dr. Jeff Spencer. He's like a coach of Neil Armstrong and all kinds of other
Okay,
athletes.
that's
And
cool.
and it was really cool. I didn't know who he was because I was there like breaking bread with them on a small mastermind. So I'm there eating. I'm like, hey, so what do you do? Like, just curious, but it was kind of awesome to see how his relationship was with his wife.
Yeah.
Like everybody else are like Dr. Jeff Spencer, and I'm here like, oh, he's probably a known guy. Like I'm sitting down here with him. I don't know who he is, but what really impressed me about him is the way he communicated with his wife.
Mhm.
They had this friendship, and they're already like 70 something, going on 80 or something like that. They're like little lovebirds, and I told them, hey,
Aw.
like. I told them like I know you've done a lot of great things. I don't know much about you, but after spending 2 days with you, I really admire how you guys are in your marriage. I want to have that when I get older with my wife. And
Yeah.
he was touched. But yeah, communication, like you said, pursuing your spouse. How do you keep the romance alive? I think
Mhm.
that's a big challenge. Especially when you have kids and then when you've been
1,000%.
married for a long time. Yep. Mm-hmm.
No, I completely agree. So our kids are older, and so we're essentially empty nesters, which is very invigorating from a standpoint of like that physical intimacy is much easier. So I definitely feel for couples, especially those who have like really small kids, because it's so physically demanding. You know, the constant like changing of diapers or potty training, or yeah, are you in the potty?
I got three, so
Uh, yeah, so it's like I feel for people who are dealing with all that. And I know that people are just like completely wiped out. They're exhausted trying to just
Mhm,
manage the demands of work and home life and meals and maybe even as the kids get into sports and activities and all of those things, like it's really just hard to have any energy left
mm,
at the end of the day, or beginning of the day or whatever your preferences are. And so
mm,
like I do think it's super important though throughout your relationship, whatever your stage you're in, that physical intimacy is something that can be backburnered so easily, and it's also such a taboo topic. But I think it's something that respectfully needs to be talked about to a degree because
mhm,
it's so important for couples,
mhm,
to connect on a physical level. It's so important to be just as intentional about that as any other aspect of the relationship.
mhm,
And I think that we did well over the years with a variety of demands. Um, but I definitely see the difference of like, this is the first time, when we met, we already had kids. So there wasn't like that honeymoon phase where
mhm,
it was just us. There was never just an us period. So there wasn't that to kind of remind us of our foundation. So we kind of plopped into the middle, like we did everything out of order, like some couples do. And but now we're at a phase in life where we can continue to grow our intimacy physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. But I always encourage people, whatever phase they're in, if there's something in the way of your physical intimacy, whether it's physical, like mental, just your the management of time or bitterness,
mhm,
resentment, or any of those things that can get in the way, like I always encourage people to deal with it. Like deal with it because it's just so important for your relationship to connect on that level. And not
mm,
just the amount of couples that are struggling in that regard is like alarming. And people
mhm,
can be incredibly lonely in
mhm.
their own marriages.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and there's times that people, they physically can't, and they shouldn't be pushed into those things. Like people are recovering from things, they're going through hard times. I'm not saying people should do things that they're just, they're not there for, but I do think that it should, physical touch should always remain a priority in a
Mm,
marriage. And it just needs to be talked about tastefully
yeah.
a little bit more, and I
Yeah.
think that there needs to be more support for couples in that regard. And I'm in a lot of course, women's groups on Facebook. I would assume you're not in those groups. So I
Yeah.
see, I don't think you can pull it off.
No.
I don't think you're good at floating under the radar. And so I see all the struggles that they're experiencing,
Mhm,
having kids, having low libido, having, you know, all of the different struggles that they're, and it's tough. It's a challenge for marriage. There's a lot
Yeah.
of big heavy hitters, like lack of communication, financial struggles,
Mm-hmm.
and sex. It's
Mm-hmm.
just one of those things that can really be a killer if
Absolutely.
people don't deal with those issues.
Absolutely. Obviously we have 3 kiddos and we're going sorry, but ooh, okay, here we go. Step on myself. I have
Run up your own foot.
I know for like so we have 3 kiddos and it's not easy at all, right? We put one down, the other one starts crying, and there's fighting, all kinds of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Just
recently
logistical challenges, like real
it is
logistical challenges.
very challenging, very
Mhm.
challenging. And as my wife and I were having a conversation, I reminded her that we need to put our faith in the Lord more and more, because when I read the scriptures, it reads that our life is not our own, but God is going to be able to give you this strength. So recently my wife, I would say, got more breakthrough in that area, especially after she fasted for a day,
Really?
and she started experiencing more breakthrough that way as well.
Like
And
spiritual breakthrough from the
absolutely,
process. Nice. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. And then what was interesting too is that she's able, she's more joyful now, but she also understands that there's a lot of other women going through the same thing that she was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting how negative thoughts stack up, right? And the more
Absolutely.
you let negative thoughts come in, the more they stack up. I mean, you could be a successful business owner, but yet you have insecurity about certain something, and you let those thoughts in, that's going to continue to stack up, right?
You
Same
are
thing
right.
with like depression, suicidal thoughts, all kinds of stuff that's out there.
Sure.
And then for me, how I process things is, as soon as a thought comes, I'm like, you know what? Let me evaluate this thought. Do I really want to stack up this thought? You know what? It's probably not going to be beneficial because of this,
Mm-hmm.
this, this, and that. You know what? This thought doesn't really belong. Like I don't want to be dwelling on this, so I'm just going
Mm-hmm.
to cast it out, right?
Yeah, so you're
And
sifting. You're sorting, you're
yes,
sifting. Yeah.
yes. And then my wife started doing that recently too, and it's helped her a lot. But going back to what you were talking about, communication, I think communication is key in
Mm-hmm.
marriage. Communication is key in different areas of life. Like for example, with the parenting, all right, who's gonna take my middle child a bath? Who's gonna have dinner? Like from little things like that to like, okay, this is how I want to be romanticized. This is like my love
Right.
language. I like gifts. And then for
Oh,
me too,
yeah.
I had a conversation with my wife years ago, and I'm like, okay, for me, I'm expecting sex every single day, but I
Mm-hmm.
know that's not realistic. But again, it took me a
Mm-hmm.
while for me to open up to my wife like this. Then afterwards, she's like, all right, cool, like we could settle on X amount of days. I'm like, okay.
Right.
And then we're like going
I
like
mean, that
negotiating.
can work. That negotiation
Yeah.
can work for a lot of couples, like as long as you can find a happy medium where like
Yep.
both people are, they're satisfied with that. Sometimes a
Mm-hmm.
break is necessary. But
Absolutely.
but frequency is important too. It kind of
Absolutely.
keeps things going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we just learn to communicate on every single thing, because if we don't, something's out of order. And like you said, we have to recalibrate often
Mm-hmm.
and figure out
Mm-hmm.
what's not working, what is working, what we have to change.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, we took down our TV because we noticed that we are just consuming too much as a family. And I'm like, I want to be
Okay.
a little more active, a little,
That's
more
a big
productive.
choice.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So
Mm-hmm.
we're a little radical, but I think
But that's
my
good.
oh, for sure. My thought process is I want to do things different, right?
You want to
So,
do things your way. You want to do things the way that it works for your family,
mhm,
not what
mhm,
everybody else is doing.
absolutely.
I know that
So,
you brought up love languages, and I think that that's really important, and um, I think that there's love languages that aren't on the list, but I'll circle back to that. But my husband and I have very different love languages. I'm very much a words of affirmation person. So I love like compliments and praise, and And so I have gotten very comfortable like telling him like I need praise, which is really weird because people are like, you're fishing for compliments. Oh, I'm like, I'm not fishing. I'm telling you flat out, I need a compliment. I don't need a fishing rod. I'm like, I'm going to reach in and grab the whole fish out of the water. But the way I think about it is like, if you can ask for physical touch, if you can ask for help in the
Mm,
kitchen, if you can ask for a gift for your birthday, why in the world can you not ask for like a compliment or praise or for somebody to say thank you or appreciation? And I think in a
mhm.
weird way, it's the most taboo. It's like, to me, the easiest one, because all you have to do is say thank you or like you look great or I really appreciate your help on that call today. But it's like, it's a weird one because it's a weird one to say, hey, tell me how amazing I am, you
Yeah.
know? And so I've had to be like kind of a little like cheeky and bold about it, and use a sense of humor to kind of like soften the weirdness of the whole thing. And then
Mhm.
he's an acts of service. And I'm like, dude, can't you just take a compliment? Like, so much, because I'm like, that's a lot more equitable. And I work with him all day long and I help him with his business. So like my whole day is an act of service. But sometimes that because because it's something I do regularly, I'm like afraid, like, am I still doing acts of service? Because I do this so much. So
Mm.
it's kind of hard. So one thing that we recently in the last couple of weeks implemented is at the beginning of the week on Sunday, we text each other a wish list of like love language gifts that we would be interested in receiving from the other person, and then the other person can choose three things like that they don't normally would do.
Mm.
So it could be like a massage or a small gift or like you're gonna cook my favorite dinner tonight or whatever.
Mm.
So we've been sending each other, and then the other person will just surprise the person, like, and just do it. And so
Mm.
that's been really fun because like things that takes some of the guesswork out of it, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, what does this even mean? Like, what do they actually want? And how do I show up for them in a way that's meaningful and fresh? And so we've been doing, like, for him, it's like, he'll be like, schedule me a massage. I'm like, all I have to do is pick up the phone, or like, it's so easy. Like, my brain has overcomplicated this, and all he needed me to do is schedule something for him.
Mm.
So it's been really cool because it's taken some of the guesswork out. It sort of translated it
Mm.
for one another. And then when it happens, you're like, ooh, I know what this is. And you're like super excited because you kind of planned it for yourself, but doesn't matter. You're still getting what you want. I think that's us taking kind of communication to the next level for us. I was saying earlier,
Mhm.
like your communication can always be better. For us, it's
Mhm.
saying like, this is what I want today, or this is what I want
Mhm.
this week. This is how you can show up for
Mm.
me now. And then
Yeah.
also asking each other, like, how can I help you today? What can I do for you today? Just to kind of
Mm.
stay like in touch with what that person needs. Because even if I'm completely slammed, there's probably something small I can do for him that's going to make him feel seen and vice versa.
Mhm.
And usually it's just something like, it's just kind of annoying for the other person to do. Like, if you can take that tiny little, if you can make that one phone call for me, or if you can deal with that one little task for me that I just hate to do, makes my life easier. And then you feel like that feels like affection for sure. I feel
Mm.
that attachment, and which I think is good for the intimacy all in all of its forms.
Mm. So good. So good. And I want to stay in this topic just for a little bit longer because it's so
Okay,
good. And I'm sure our audience are going to be getting a
I'm all
lot
about it.
of, yeah, for sure. Okay,
Let's
cool.
go.
So, what kind of, how can I say this? Okay. So do you think people are having those type of conversations in marriage or before they get married, or are they not having those conversations of expectations, um, and what they expect from their partner?
I don't think those conversations are happening on that level in the earlier stages because I think there's a lot of assumptions that the other person
Mm.
knows or should know what they
Yeah.
want. Because when you feel something and you ruminate on it and it's in your head constantly, somehow you feel like it's a universal truth, but it's not a universal truth. It's just your truth. It's what you need. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody's different. So you're thinking, like, isn't it obvious that I want help with the dishes after I cook dinner? Isn't it obvious that I want to have sex this many times a week? Is
Mm-hmm.
because like it feels so big and real to you that it just feels universal, and it's just not. I think it takes a long time for us as individuals to realize that what we need isn't, there's universal truths to it, but that not everybody is exactly built the way that we are, and that we actually have to share
Mm.
those things about ourselves with our partner, and not necessarily in a form of criticism of like, hey, this is absolutely not a criticism, but I would really enjoy us doing more date nights every month. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
only doing it once a month, and I really, really enjoy it, and I find myself getting super excited. So what if we did it every week? You
Mm.
know, and so yeah, I think that I don't think people have those conversations early because I don't think they know that they have to.
Mm. That's interesting. Before we got married, we went through like counseling session with our pastor,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really say a lot of things, to be honest. Didn't really talk
Your
about
pastor
past
was there.
struggles. I did not want to share, and I didn't share, right? And that
Something
was,
was
I would
definitely
say, bad on
appropriate.
me. Oh yeah, I should have, but I didn't, and she held back too. So when we
Sure.
got married, man, it was tough. Like the
Mm-hmm.
first 3, 6 months, I'm like, what did I get myself into? Right? I
Right.
stopped dating for a long time. I did all the
Yeah.
right things. Would try not to have sex before marriage, all those things. Then
Mm-hmm.
boom. And then I'm like, what did I just do? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would tell people that want to get married is set the expectations right away. What do you want in
Mm-hmm.
a partner? What does that look like going into marriage? Also, open up about your past, because if you hide everything and then you go into a relationship and marriage, then you open up about everything.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how the other person's going to be able to receive that or process
Mm-hmm.
that.
True.
So for me, I held back on a lot of things. And then when I started opening, she was shocked, but not
Mm.
surprised. She's like, I knew it, but dang, that's crazy. Right?
It's scary, right? To be vulnerable with another human being, like
Super,
on that
super.
level. And
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot, you know, in couples where they find out things about their spouse after because they're waiting on security. They're
Yeah.
waiting on like, I want to be sure this person isn't gonna leave. But
Mm-hmm.
then they're also having to deal with sharing sensitive, challenging information about themselves after
Yeah.
they've gotten married, and it's, you know, that, you know, there's a push pull with that, right? And
Yeah.
so you're like saying, well, you're married to me, so you have to accept this,
Yeah.
but I also probably should have told you this before we got engaged.
Mm.
But you know, I think most of the time couples work through that. Did you
Mm-hmm.
guys just kind of work through that challenging time of like getting
We've
to know each other's like whole selves?
Yeah, we've been married now going on 10 years, believe it or not.
Nice.
I was married, I think I was 22 when we got married.
Okay.
And we had to work through a lot of things, a lot of
Yeah.
things. Since today, I'd be chatting maybe in a podcast or or maybe like with some friends, and I'll say something about what happened like when I was 15, 14, whatever the case. He's wait, I didn't know that. Wait, what?
Mhm.
You never told me that. And it just comes out because I have a lot of stories, right?
Right.
Um, and I've been through some stuff. So she was like, "Dang, what the heck? How come you held back?" I'm like, "I didn't. I just
I
didn't remember
yeah.
that till
I can't
now."
remember
Like,
everything I told you so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's interesting because we've been together, you know, like I said, 18 years. Our 14th wedding anniversary is this month. And we're still kind of learning a little bit, you know, you just kind of, I feel like, I feel like we know each other really well, but I always think that there's a inner part of a person that's reserved for them.
mm,
And you continue to kind of expose it a little bit more and more, but I feel like as much as I know Byron, as much as I've been vulnerable with him, I think that there's still going to be like little nuggets of things that we'll learn about each other as long as we live. I think that keeps it interesting. You know,
Oh
like
yeah, for
we both
sure.
have stories to tell and we've
Mm.
both been through so much. And it's just, I don't know, like it's just, it it's not our story, it's just part of our story. You know,
Yeah,
those things that happen when you were a kid, choices that you made then, like that's
yeah,
part of your story, but it's not your whole story because your whole story isn't even written yet. And that's,
yeah,
I was kind of talking about like, what do I share with people, because like I'm still being written. Like
yeah.
I don't even know my story yet. I only know
Hmm.
what's happened. I don't know what's yet to come.
So good, so good.
Yeah.
And recently, my wife and I, which again, trying to convince her to come on the show and do a podcast with me,
I would
but
love
she
to
doesn't
meet
want to
her.
be on camera. I'm like, no, you have to be. She's like, no. Anyways,
She's gonna be
hopefully
like
things change.
that lady whose husband is, he's always in the background. Have the lady who we thought it was her dad, but it was her dad pretend, or it was her husband pretending to be like sound like a dad. I'll have to send it to you, but she could just be off camera and just like that's their whole thing. It's funny. She can do
Yeah,
that.
yes. So that's to me. But I was telling her how, I'm not gonna be the type of person that's gonna be crying about my feelings in her lap and tell her, "Oh, like I feel this way and the world's burning." I'm not gonna do that, right? I'm gonna first have a conversation with God, wrestle with God, pour out my heart, be on
Mm-hmm.
my knees. I mean, everything. Now that's how I'm gonna like. That's my relationship with God. Then I have my relationship with my close circle, very small,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm now not having the same conversation I'm having with God, but it looks different. I'm like, bro,
Sure.
this is my situation. Dang, I can't seem to, get breakthrough or anything like that. But
Mhm.
bro, pray for me, man, because I'm giving up and I need strength. Like, and then
Yeah.
I have that conversation. Then I have a conversation with my wife. I'm like, hey, things are not looking good right now, right?
Mhm.
Or this is going wrong,
Yeah.
but let's pray together, right? You're by my side. I just need you. I just need to know that you're by my side and we're just
Yeah.
pushing through. And so
Mhm.
that's how I communicate with her, right?
Yeah.
Now, through the years, I think now she's understood that. But in the beginning, I think she expected me to just, you know, cry in front of her and you know what
Mhm.
I mean?
Just
Open up
have
about
to
my feelings.
practice these
And that's not
things.
how I'm wired, right? And
Yeah.
and Psalm, that's why I love Psalms. David was like a man's man, killer, stone
Mhm.
cold killer, right?
Mhm.
But he also worshiped God, but
Mhm.
also like wrestle with God and sometimes even doubted God. I'm like, where are you, God? Then another
Right.
chapter is like, thank you, Lord, for always being by my side. I'm like, dang.
He
I
rode
feel
the
sometimes.
waves. He was going through it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, and I think that that's really good. You know, I think that first of all, I think it's great that you have that relationship with God first and foremost. You know, I think that like that you can build your whole like cornerstone on that is essential because it's going to be like a completely different filter than if you didn't have that. And then to have
Mm,
your wise counsel, the people that you can turn to who are discerning and who care about you and love you as a person. And you know, I always think it's really important then to have people that you can lean on that also love you as a couple,
so
because
good.
we need to sometimes have somebody that we can share our struggles with, but they can't just love you. They have to love you and your wife and your
Mhm.
family and you guys as a whole unit, because they have to be rooting for you guys.
That's
They
so
can't
good.
just be pro you, they got to be pro y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important that every person has a confidant that they can talk to about like some of the more delicate struggles that we have in marriage. But I think they have to be people that you both love and trust and that you know love you equally. And so I have a really close friend who's like a sister to me.
Mm-hmm.
And like Byron knows that she's somebody that I can talk to, and she's never once in our entire relationship like thrown any kind of shade or judgment at Byron,
Mm,
or been a remote threat to like our relationship. And And that's a gem. Like that's a total
Mm.
that's a huge gift to have people that you can talk to who are like truly rooting for you guys as a couple and as a
Oh,
family.
so
And who
good.
are going to challenge us back, right? Because sometimes we're
Hmm.
just dumb. And somebody
Yeah.
wants to be like, you're tripping, like,
Yeah.
but in a nice way, like push back a little bit. Like, maybe you're being a little more emotional right now than normal, or, maybe your expectations are a little high,
Hmm.
somebody needs to sometimes say, hey, I love you. I hear you. Your feelings are valid, but also come back to reality
Yeah,
a little bit.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I realized that I didn't have any people like that in my circle for a
Mm,
very long time
yeah.
until I started changing the way I
Mm-hmm.
communicated with people. So I had to almost recalibrate all my friendships and then set the expectation of like, we need to correct each other. We need to hold each other accountable. We need to be praying for each other. We need to be taking
Mm-hmm.
care of each other. And then
Mm-hmm.
everything shifted after that, right? The
Changing
people that were,
expectations and the
yeah,
dynamic of that
the people that
relationship.
are really like kind of like, not really in our circle, kind of like went out and didn't really wanted to connect no more. But the people that stayed are the ones that we're continually building closer connections with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely important to do if you
Yeah.
don't have that circle, right?
Yeah, you need people that are the iron sharpens iron kind of people. The people
Mm,
who are going to challenge you to be better, and that you can in turn challenge them to be better. And people who are pro family, who are pro marriage, who share your values. Maybe they're not in the same political party as you are. Maybe they don't
hmm.
do life exactly the way that you do it, but they have respect for the big things, and
So
they're
good.
never going to try to detract you from your values. That's
Wow,
important.
that's so good. That was a slam dunk right there. And I'm gonna change it just a bit because I know we can continue to talk, and then
Okay.
we're almost at an
Yeah.
hour. So
Oh, what are we doing?
I
We're
know for real.
at an
Oh,
hour.
sorry.
No.
I knew
That's
there
good.
was
I'm enjoying it.
so I want to talk about you in business. Obviously, you're in business with your spouse. How is
Hmm.
that dynamic like?
Most days it's great. Occasionally I want to, scream a little. Most days it's really great. We have a lot of fun working together most of the time. And, we continue to learn how to communicate better. Our current, kind of thing that we're focused on right now is understanding what the other person wants sometimes. And so, based on the dynamic of a client or a situation, because we have roles and we're pretty clear
Hmm.
on our roles, and we have pretty clear expectations, but then there's those little just weird situations. And so sometimes I have to say, are you venting to me right now? Are you asking me for help right now? Do you want
Mm,
me to do something about this right now? And if so, how can I help? Because sometimes I feel like he wants me to take action or he wants my advice. And
mm,
he just really truly wants me to just listen while he
yeah.
vents. And then other times, I think he just wants me to listen. And then I get to the end of the conversation and I'm like, wait a minute. I think he's wanting me to take action. So our current like thing that I think we're really working on improving is clarifying what we want out of a conversation and what we really need from the other person.
Mm,
So, I mean, even today I've asked him, are you venting? Or are you asking for help? Are you
that's
asking
so
for,
good.
or saying up front, he was venting about something earlier and he was like, I'm not ready to receive any feedback at all. I just want to just complain about this. And I'm
Oh.
like, cool, because I don't have any feedback. So go, which is cool for me because I am an advisor. And so
Mm,
I love giving advice. But also it's important for me to remember that not every problem needs my solutions.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, we're getting better at clarifying those things, so that way we can show up for each other in the ways that the other person actually needs and not just the ways we assume that they need or we think that they should be excited to receive from us. So
So
that's
good.
improving our work relationship. I mean, like I said, we've worked together since 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. It's a lot better than it used to be. It continues to improve. Most of the time, we're not nowhere near each other. It's really more of how do we solve this problem? And, and we both have our own coping mechanisms too, like
Mm.
one of us may avoid situations while the other one may like lean into situations. And so, we continue to like kind of learn how to take advantage of our strengths, our
Mm-hmm.
individual strengths, so we can be stronger as a couple, stronger in
Mm-hmm.
business, and better communicators. And then kind of like in life, picking up some of the slack from the other person when they just really hate doing something that isn't really their preference. So
Mm.
yeah, I think that there's always room for improvement, but I can definitely see us continuing to do this for many more years. So
Mm.
yeah, I
And
like
it,
helping couples with their work dynamic because it really is very indicative of their private dynamic. I
right.
think it really exemplifies and like really puts a spotlight on those things. And so things that seem kind of small, maybe, or manageable in your normal life, it really multiplies it when you work together, because
Mm.
whatever issues you're having, those communication issues, those power struggles, whatever is happening, like you're really going to feel it when you work together. You're really, really
Mm.
going to learn a lot about your partner and about yourself and about your relationship. So I think entrepreneurial couples are fun couples to chat with.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And some of the like there's like levels to it, right? Like you, let's say, are not married, interested in somebody, going on a date is different than being engaged, married, first year, 5 years, 10 years, like a lot of things change. But
Right.
then you add doing running a business together.
Sure.
That changes too, right? So
Absolutely.
how has that changed from just being married to now being running being running a business together essentially?
We ran a business together before we were married, and but it's different now because that was sort of his business, and this is, even though now he's the face, he's still the face of the business. It's absolutely within his zone of genius, in the CPA, CFO, business, finances, all those things. Um, but it is, our dynamic continues to evolve in that because this is something that we founded together. This is something that we're doing, wholeheartedly together. So, you know, I think it continues to challenge our relationship in a good way
Mm-hmm.
because we're committed to how we respond to it, and we're committed to each other. We're committed to the process, our relationship to the business, all of
Yeah.
that. I don't think it's for the faint of heart. I think if people are struggling in their marriage, it's kind of like having a baby won't fix it, and neither will having a business. Like you kind of got to work on the basics, before you start throwing in those extra layers of stress
Mm.
to it. Because you got to be prepared to deal with this stuff, hurt feelings, and
Mm.
you got a whole nother menu of offenses that can occur when you're working together and you're dealing with clients or customers or whatever. And so you can really step in it if you're not careful.
Mm. What's interesting is that people that I meet that are either together or engaged, I tell them, hey, get married, stop wasting time, because getting married is a character builder, right? That's what I
Oh
tell them all the
yeah.
time.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, you definitely grow, but also working together with your spouse, building a business, I would say that's also a big change, right? And has that helped you guys with your communication because you guys are running a business together?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it provides like a practical aspect
Mhm.
to like, I feel like sometimes in relationships, like having good communication can seem like a luxury. When you're running a business, good
Mhm.
communication is not a luxury.
Mm.
It's an absolute necessity. And of course it is in relationships too. But sometimes people like have a hard time like putting a putting a value on that. and
Right.
it can just relationships can just be like, oh, it's just about feelings, so it doesn't really matter. And of course, it's not just about feelings. It's about respect. It's
Mm-hmm.
about harmony. It's about things that like run deep and that our children are gonna like mimic and learn from. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to it. But I think when you are running a business together, you have a very, very, very tangible right now reason to kind of get your crud together if you don't. Because if you don't get it together, not only is your relationship in jeopardy, but so is your livelihood. And so I think that helps men in particular, like make it a little bit more of a priority. Because, being a provider is important. It's your career, it's your reputation. And so I think it can kind of help bring it to the front. And I'm thankful because our relationship has always been something that Byron has put a lot of focus. He's always prided himself on being a good husband. That's something that's like really important to his heart. But I think that working together makes it even more important, makes it even more urgent. When we do have a communication breakdown, like, I feel like it just makes it, even more important and more powerful. When we do overcome a hurdle, it's even more powerful for us because it's something that is guiding us in multiple directions of our lives.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious, is he very intentional because he saw a good marriage growing up, or did he see the opposite growing up?
I never like to share other people's stories, so I'll be mindful of that. I think we both wanted to do things differently.
Okay.
I think we wanted to, and I think a lot of people feel that way, but
Yeah.
we kind of had to figure some things out. We had to figure
Yeah.
out how to do marriage on our own.
Yeah.
And so his parents are still married after many, many years. And so he's very fortunate in that regard. And my situation was definitely different. My mom had me when she was very young. And so, that was, it was different. And I think that there's like good lessons to learn there. And I don't know, we just kind of had to figure it out. We were really figure it out kind of people. Whether it comes to business, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to fitness, parenting, like we just had to figure it out. We're like, we're the type of people, we have that stick to itiveness. Like when we commit to something, like we're gonna figure it out.
Absolutely.
Teamwork makes the dream work. We were doing it one way or the other. We're gonna get this done. I told him, if he ever leaves me, just give me 10 minutes to pack because I'm right behind you. It's just cute and crazy, and it's 5 votes, and I'm fine with it.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's how we feel too. We're just, as parents trying to figure it out. 2 kids figuring it out. Moving out of state, we have to figure it out.
Yeah.
There's always something, right? Business as well. There's always something.
You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna screw up, and you're gonna figure it out. That's just it.
That's the reality. Well, man, almost an hour. I'm sorry. I tried.
1 into 2.
I know, for real. But we are gonna have you back because I wanted to keep going. But how can people connect with you? How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so a couple of different ways. Our business website is cfoaf.com. And so we do like all kinds of business services, accounting, and so forth. You could find me on Instagram at Mrs. Krissy Wolf, Chris with a K, Wolf with an E. And I love connecting with people. Always happy to help and encourage, especially like couples who are figuring it out, because I think that's what we're all doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're definitely gonna have you back ASAP as soon as you are available.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of fun. Maybe next time we'll have your wife off camera. Yelling stuff into the wind. There and there. It'd be fun.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I'm gonna try my best. With that being said, guys, be sure to like, share if you got value from this show. subscribe, and all that. Remember, keep fighting the good fight. Stay in prayer. Stay dangerous. And we're out.
That Rodriguez show, yeah, that Rodriguez show, yeah.